right, Mike, thank you very much for joining us for IT Security Labs series on how to get into cybersecurity. I appreciate you taking time to share your knowledge and your expertise with the community and also to share advice on how to get started in cybersecurity. But before we get into all those questions, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. Tell us who is Mike and how did you end up here right now where you are in cybersecurity?
Sure. My name is Michael LaSalvia. Some of you guys may know me as Gen X Web from Digital Offensive. I've been in cybersecurity now since I would say around 97. I started off in doing a lot of operational roles, firewalls, incident response, basically the low-hanging fruit stuff, working in different SOCs and building my way up through the tower of each tier of kind of like the security background, like building that stepping stone to get up to where I am now. The last few years now, I've been working in pen testing, red teaming, and doing some management as well. So I work for a large Fortune 500 type company. If you Google me, you'll probably figure out what company it is. I won't say on the phone. I won't say on the interview right now. But we do a lot of work for different clients where our skills come into play.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. So I was wondering if you can tell us sort of the steps that you took to end up working in cybersecurity. I know you mentioned that you worked on a lot of firewalls. Was it always your goal to end up in a pen testing position? Or did you take intentional steps to end up there?
My original goal was actually in hotel restaurant management, actually. So I went to school for hotel restaurant management. When I got out of school after getting my associate's degree, I realized people off the street were making more money than I was with a degree. And I was like, this is not where I want to be down the road. So I refocused my education on networking. At the time in the 90s, early 2000s, network admin was the big thing then. There wasn't really a pen tester. Excuse me. There wasn't like security or anything like that. Everyone wanted to be a network admin. That was the big thing to be. When I graduated school, I started working basically doing standard sysadmin stuff. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but I really want to get more hands-on. I want to understand how these attacks were happening that our company was so worried about, how these people were getting into the environment. And you're talking about early 90s, 2000, you haven't had that whole like .com bust at the time yet. Security was the newest thing on the market. Like people were making money out the wazoo just for being able to control a firewall. So I started looking around, started doing some work for a company at the time called Guardant. They're now owned by, they were bought out by VeriSign and now SecureWorks owns them.
Yeah.
But at the time we worked in a SOC and it was really my first introduction to security. At the time I really had no concrete background in firewalls, IPS, IDS, incident response. And working in that environment allowed me to build that skill set. So basically we did managed security for many different companies out there. And we controlled their firewalls. We handled all their incident response events. So like large TV stations, three-letter agencies and stuff like that would contract our company to do the work for them. And basically we got to see things from the standard mom and pop all the way up to these huge companies out there that you would never normally get to work on. But now we're hands-on, deep in their security posture and building that knowledge over those few years I spent there.
Oh, nice.
I think that's what really drove me to want to move into the actual attack side. Like we had a consulting team at the time, and they would come in and like kind of showboat and act all cool and just listen to all the cool things they got to do. I was like, man, that's kind of where I want to be. That's what I want to be doing. Yeah. So I started looking around and just each role I jumped to from there, just kind of focused more and more on that aspect until I kind of ended up where I am today.
Thank you for sharing that. And so from what you mentioned, I was listening closely, and at no point did you mention IT certification or sort of an IT-related education. So that brings us to the point. A lot of people, when you read on forums, they ask you, which certifications should I get to get my first job? I think that's the question people ask a lot of time. Or should I go for the degree or the certification. Say, as somebody who has been there and has seen the industry grow from the 90s up to now, what are your thoughts on those certifications versus degrees, and what do you think about them?
Yeah, so I'll give you a good quick little story here. One of my buddies in college, he is a marketing professional. He graduated college with a marketing degree, no IT work, nothing like that. He's now a CISO of a very large bank. He has no certifications, no formal background. He just had a passion for security. And I think when it really comes down to it, it's really about the passion behind the person. One of the things I say when I'm interviewing people is you can have all the schooling out there, you can have all the fancy certs, but if you don't have that mindset, that drive to be in this field, you're not going to make it in this field. Our field changes so much that you have to be willing to spend that extra time doing that work to really excel in the security field. With that being said, I would say some of the things that will help you get into the field, like to get your foot in the door, is definitely nowadays some type of education, right? Most jobs now require some type of bachelor's degree. Early on in my career, that wasn't a requirement, but I would say 9 out of 10 job postings I read these days say you must have a bachelor's degree. That being said, do you go out and spend tons of money in the top schools, or do you find a local 4-year college that you can save up your money, get through that program, then start get that foot in the door, and then start having your employer help assist you to get the certs? Or there are certs out there that you can look at getting yourself that are not too costly, right? So we know the OCP up to recently was, I'm going to say this with a caveat right here, right? Some people say up to recently it was really affordable, and it's still very affordable when you compare it against many other certifications out there, right? You compare against stands, you look at $9,000 to $10,000 easily, versus 12 to what is it nowadays, $1,500 give or take. So there's you have to figure out how to invest in yourself before I think a company will invest in you as well. So if I was looking at certifications out the door, I would ask myself, what do I want to be doing, right? Everyone wants to be a pen tester. Like we see it every single day on Facebook. We see it in all these rooms. It's one of the reasons why our channels grow so much, because everyone wants to be a pen tester. They come running out and they're Googling and they're finding people like us and they're watching our things. I don't suggest becoming a pen tester right away because there's so much to know before you become a pen tester. I would say start off a little bit lower in the totem pole here. Understand system administration, right? Get your hands dirty. Understand what the attacker is attacking. Why is that register file on Windows so important? Why the attacker is messing with those different DILs, registry settings, things like that on Windows, and how you can interact with that. And then from there, build up from there. Look at some of the blue team stuff. Now you know why they're looking at it or how to admin it. How do you defend against these attacks? Once you see the defense come in, the signatures and the different ways that they're trying to attack the system, that gives your mind some more ideas how you can then attack the system. So I would say to try to really get involved, definitely the bachelor's degree. Look at like different classes online. Cyber has a bunch of open classes that's not too costly. Different admin type classes. Even look at your local college for different admin roles or ops positions or things like that, as far as educational classes. Like ITT Tech, which is no longer around, used to have like a cybersecurity, a Windows admin class that was maybe $1,000 to take that certification, that class, and you had that experience. Then a lot of these people don't get that experience. And then from there, just start building your resume up. Start looking for those jobs and go from a junior to a senior and work your way up the ladder. Really understand what you're doing. And each time you go to jump to the next job, look for that job that's going to fit you, what you want to be doing, right? Yeah. So if I tell people the best time to look for a job is when you have a job, right? Yes. Because if you're looking for a job when you don't have a job, you're going to take the first thing that comes around because you want a job. If you have a job, you can start saying, will you help support me here? Will you help with education? What opportunities do I have? You can help negotiate pay better because you have that leverage. If they say no to you, you can say, all right, you're not the job, and you can stay, or you can make that leap still. It's up to you.
I like that you mentioned that you sort of need to know the systems that you're going to be protecting. So starting as a network admin or a sysadmin really helps, because that's the path that I took. It took me 8 years to get a cybersecurity job, but What I had to do was studied help desk, became a system
Yeah.
administrator, then a network engineer, then a cybersecurity job. And during that time, especially when I was a system administrator, I was obsessed with monitoring my network because I wanted to know what's going on. Then I started playing with the blue team sort of stuff, especially the ability to know what kind of traffic is running on the network. So I appreciate that you mentioned that you sort of have to give yourself a chance to learn those things because it's very helpful when you finally get to defend those infrastructures.
Yeah,
So
definitely,
since you
definitely.
mentioned that, what would be a clear path that you would take right now? You don't even say if you don't have a degree in cybersecurity or you don't have a degree in IT in general, you work, say, in accounting and you want to move into IT, what would be a path that you would prescribe to someone? Say, start here and do these things. Would you list any specific certifications, say, for someone who is interested in networking or programming to follow through on the path?
Yeah. The one of the biggest things I would suggest there, right? If you're working for a firm that has an IT security program, see if you can
Yeah,
do an internship within the firm or within your business, right?
yeah,
Um, when I worked at the hospital, we had a guy that was a project manager and he had interest in security. So he started basically splitting half his day between his project management role and security to start building that skill set to make that final transition over and to see if he
mhm,
really likes it. So if you happen to be at a job where that's an opportunity, definitely talk to your manager and see if that's a possibility, and then build out a career path where you can start building stuff. Because a lot of times companies are really short on security people, and they're really hard to find good talent security people these days. There's a lot of
yeah,
them in the market, but they're not willing to make the jumps because they're getting paid well. Their jobs are treating them well, so it's hard to recruit new talent. So if you can do a path like that, that's probably the easiest path. If you're looking for schooling, education, certifications, I would say um, see what your financial capabilities are. Right, everyone's financial capabilities are different, and so I try to keep that in mind.
yeah,
Look at your free options, right? We have our Cyberys, our Udemy's, our YouTubes, and things like that. Start going through that material, figuring out where you want to be, right? There's so many different aspects of security. We already talked about ops, firewalls, IPS, IDS, blue teams. There's red teams, there's pen testing. There's so many different aspects. There's security risk managers. Figure out where you want to be in the security realm, right? Everyone says pen testing. I can tell you, pen testing is kind of almost like a dying trade. It's morphing as the business changes, and we're seeing more people want to be there. But long term, we see more people moving out of that realm because they're starting to get burned out or things are changing. For certifications, I would look at if you have no experience, start off like low key. Look at your basic like Network Plus, your basic Cisco classes. Understand how traffic flows through a network, how each protocol works, right? Because as an attacker, you're modifying that protocol, and if that protocol doesn't respond how you think it should, is that a bug? Is that a feature? Are you getting blocked by something? How do you fix that to continue on? From there, if you're looking at, let's say, web application pen testing, there's a lot of great books out there. You want to make sure you understand how web apps work, how that protocol functions. Programming languages, there's so many out there that it's hard to really tell someone where to look, right? If you're in
yeah,
the area of application development, like that stuff, you have your .NET frameworks, your Java, your ASP, your um, what is it, Node, and everything else out there these days that people build web apps in. And for one person to master all those languages, you
yeah,
could be spending years of your life on. You really got to figure out the high level, understand the basics of programming. If you can get the basics of programming, understanding structure, how items are called, and have a basic understanding how to read the source code, you should be pretty good. Like I'm not saying that you're going to be great, but I don't think you need to be super hands into it where you're able to dissect every single bit of code. Um, if you're looking at writing your own tools, definitely you're going to be looking at Python. You're going to be looking at some type of Java with some of these tools these days.
yeah.
And one of the biggest things I've been seeing a lot lately too, which I haven't personally got involved with, is Go language as well.
Oh, yeah.
I've been hearing a lot of people writing tools in that, and I'm like, I'm just getting fully on board with Python. Now you guys want me to move to Go? I'm like, oh man. So there's a lot of options out there. It's really about where you want to be in your career, how much time you want to spend doing it, and what your financial abilities are. For myself personally, because I have a really good job and my wife's pretty supportive, I've been able to invest some of my own money into different things I want to do. So like I did the OSCP myself. I
Okay.
did back in the day the CISP myself. I've done
Mhm.
multiple Udemy classes. I paid for maybe $100 or so, give or take here and there. I'm looking at doing the OSCE. I kind of put that on hold right now, this whole virus thing and jobs and stuff like that. Just not really have time to sit down and focus on that. But I'm
Yeah.
able to spend that extra money, right? So I take $2,000-3,000 a year and invest it back in myself, and then possibly write it off on taxes down the road, if possible, right? Like you always got to talk to your accountant on that stuff. But there's a lot of opportunities. It's really a matter of how the people want to take, where they want to go, and what they want to invest in. There's things I'll say stay away from. Like I'm not a big fan of any of these exam cram type things that you see out there. These Facebook, like become a security pro overnight.
Oh
Those
yeah.
things are not real. Like too many people go out there, they spend money, and then they're like, well, I couldn't do this or I couldn't get there. So definitely follow the reviews and check out what's good out there. Humble Bumble, for example, is a really good one lately. Have you checked any of their stuff out?
Yes, actually, I was going to say that's perfect. Was last week I got an email for a few books. That's actually how I ended up buying some of the books that I am reading right now. I've seen some of your videos on your YouTube channel, which I will link below for people to go and visit it. You
Thanks.
show us some technical videos where you are doing things. Can you tell us about sort of your lab? You said you spend about $3,000 of your own money. When you
Yeah.
are doing these courses and also probably practicing, what kind of lab do you end up having? Do you create a lab based on what you're working on in these courses, or do you create a lab that's general, then build up on it? Can you,
Yeah.
yeah,
Um, so over the years, my labs have changed quite a bit. A few years ago, if you asked me that question,
yeah,
I probably would have had 4 or 5 servers set up with multiple VMs in them, networking equipment all around the house. Nowadays, I pretty much run everything on my MacBook. I gotta say, the MacBooks are amazing machines. I
yeah.
run VMware Fusion, and I think I have right now while I'm talking to you, I think I've spun up like 10 VMs
Oh,
and everything's still running smooth. I basically load up any of the OSs I'm looking at. I do basically do all the networking virtually through the configurations. Now, I do still have some additional hardware around the house where I do different testing as need be. Right, I like to mess around with Zigbee services, Z-Wave technologies. I'm a big phone hacker when it comes to voice over IP.
oh,
Something that it's like one of my passions. So I do have some Cisco phones around the house, PBX systems, things like that. Our house is actually configured pretty nice, where we have multiple VLANs in the house. Our
nice.
IoTs on one VLAN. We have a guest VLAN where the kids get stuck when they bring their devices over to the house, where so nothing's on my main network.
Yeah,
And then I have like a work VLAN where I gets a higher priority and stuff for my day job. And then we have our gaming and stuff like that. So our house is pretty segmented. Like our house is we have about 150 something devices connected up between all our IoT, lab materials, and things like that. But I would say 90% of my lab nowadays is really just running off my Mac, off VMs. You can get virtual firewalls, you can get virtual machines and everything else like that, where it really takes away that need to have that additional hardware these days to really do the additional work. Now, if there is a new technology out there that I want to get into, I'll go out and buy the hardware, I'll take it apart. We used to do a lot of hardware hacking. We got a bunch of Raspberry Pis. Like I have a whole toolbox downstairs that is probably like 4 feet tall that has nothing but hardware pieces in there between Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, different routers, different other technologies, readers, Wi-Fi devices, and everything in there that we use in different engagements. So it all depends what scenario I'm trying to map out in a lab environment besides what I build.
would you say a lab is something that you would value in a future candidate? say if I came to interview for your team, what kind of questions would you ask? And is a lab one of those things that you are looking at for me to talk about?
Yeah, so one way I would ask you that question is, hey, tell me about some of your passions and things you do outside your day job that's secure related that allows you to keep yourself learning and building up. And then usually I'll see if they say something about a lab, and if they do, I'll ask them about their labs as far as what they have configured and stuff like that. I got some interesting questions before, answers to these questions before.
Yeah.
One guy said he had a lab, and it literally was just his one machine, and he would download different tools on it. And I'm like, okay, well, where do you use those tools at? He's like, well, I'll just scan on the internet. It's like, no, that's not the best answer out there, man.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm always interested in finding out what other people do. And watching your videos, you definitely have quite a bit of different lab setups where you're installing these different firewalls, IPS, and the IDS, and everything else you're doing in your videos. So that's pretty impressive. So I'm assuming that you probably have a decent sized lab.
Well, yeah, just like yours, mine used to be big. I used to have 3 Dell servers running.
Yeah.
Most of those now are not running. I only run one, and I'm getting in the habit of using Docker and Kubernetes.
Okay.
And last week, actually, I was able to hack the one server so that usually with OpenStack, it requires 3 servers. So I
Yeah.
virtualize the servers and trick the hardware into believing that they're physical. But yeah, it has definitely evolved. And I also use some cloud services for
Nice.
quick deployments, especially when I'm making videos and I don't want to take too much risks. So that is awesome that you mentioned that labs are something that you ask. For someone who is wondering what a hiring manager might be looking at, you mentioned that education is very important, covering the basics, probably getting some work done. If I came to you for an interview, what kind of criteria are you looking at for me to be a qualified candidate for a job in your team?
Yeah, so I'll take an example from the current job right that we currently have open. It's actually frozen right now, but the most recent job rec we have open here right now is we're looking for someone that has 5 years experience in application security.
Yeah.
So basically someone that can come in that understands web applications greatly, right? Not only the methodology of how to scan them, but how to basically go through each application based on the technology of the application. Really look for those vulnerabilities that these automated tools are missing. So a lot of stuff like we learned in the OCP and some other things, like they teach you the basics, right? You're going to run your Derby, your Go Busters, and things like that. You're going to use Burp Suite. You're going to enumerate through all that data, but what are you going to do with that data, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to actually find that vulnerability? Because OCP, Hack the Box, you have vulnerabilities. You know they're there. You're guaranteed a way in, right?
Yeah.
There's no box in either of those that there's not a way in. When it comes to real pen testing, you can't expect to always find that way in, right? So you have to have that mentality of when to say, this is where I give up. This is my methodology. I applied my methodology. I found no vulnerabilities, and I'm comfortable going to the business and saying there is no vulnerabilities in at the current time within this application. So I usually drill down a lot into people's methodologies. Every time I get in an interview, I really go through the methodologies with them. Like, give me an example of one time you were going through a web application and you knew that it was vulnerable to XYZ attack, but you could not get it to work. At what point do you realize maybe it's not? Do you give up? How do you write your reports? Things like that. Really understanding how the person thinks. And then basically understand the technical side, right? We're always learning. So I don't really always hold that against someone if their answer is not 100%, because you may call it something else. I may call it something else. You may use one tool. I may use a different tool. But if your resume says that you're an expert in Burp, and I say, hey, tell me what tool you would use to go through and enumerate a 4-digit PIN code within Burp. And like, could you tell me what module you would use, right?
Yeah.
And most people that are truly an expert in Burp should basically right off the bat probably say intruder, right?
Yeah.
You're going to basically capture that first request. You're going to send it over maybe a repeater just to tinker with it to see if it works. And once you know it works, you're going to send it over to intruder because you want it now to basically guess all 4 digits. And then once you guessed all 4 digits, you don't want to spend days going through all those results. You want to basically have a filter on your intruder now to say, only show me the ones with the 200 response, because everything with a 403 response means it wasn't authenticated. Sorry, 404 response. 403. I was right. Sorry.
No,
so anything with a 403 response basically wasn't authenticated. So you know right there, okay, those pins didn't work. So the first one that you hit a 200 response on, you know you have a working pin. You may get multiple working pins, right? If you see multiple 400s, multiple 200s, you know you have multiple working pins. It's amazing how many people have stuff on their resumes that really don't know the technology that's on their resume. My biggest thing when I'm interviewing people, if it's on your resume, be able to fully speak upon it.
Yeah.
If you cannot fully speak fluently on the technology or something you put on your resume, remove it off your resume. Because you can't get angry at the person when they start drilling down on you because you listed something on your resume. That's my biggest pet peeve when I'm talking to people.
So your advice to someone who is just starting is, it's in your best interest to put what you know and upfront admit what you don't know, or at least say, I'm familiar with Burp, but I don't know all the ins and outs. I've used Burp a couple of times, or a few times, but I'm always willing to learn, and I'm learning right now. It's easier than if I say I know how to use it, then you ask me questions and I can't answer them.
Yeah. Okay. And I would also say too, is when you're applying to positions, right, understand the level of the position, right? If it's a senior role calling for 5+ years experience and you only been doing it for 2 years, let's say, if you don't feel comfortable with everything that's in that role's description, you may not want to apply to that role, right? I'm not saying you shouldn't, but think about it logically in your head, right? If you're only like a year in, 2 years in, and you don't think you can make it through that interview, that's going to give that hiring manager maybe a bad taste, right? So down the road, if you reapply and they see your name again, they may be like, hey, dude, like we just talked to you. You didn't make the cut. Why are you doing this again? And recruiters are notorious for that. They find your name online. They find your resume online. They're like, hey, I got a perfect job for you. I'm just going to submit your resume. No problem. You got this. Right? And they set you up. And then you get to an interview, you're like, what the heck is going on here? You're like, dude, like, I'm so sorry. This is nothing I've done.
That has happened to me before. Yeah, I can agree with that, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm glad that you also mentioned that the skills have to match. With those skills, there comes a time when, as a candidate, I'm faced with the whole metaphor of an egg and a chicken, right? For me to get a chance to speak to you and convince you that I am a good learner and I can do this job, I need to go pass through, say, HR in some companies. And they have these scanning robots that they call them that look for buzzwords like CISSP definitely gets you put somewhere else. OSCP gets you put somewhere else.
Yep.
As a new candidate that has been learning by myself, how do I best approach that where I at least get a chance to talk to you?
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one because you're 100% right about these robots. First, I would say 9 out of 10 times use Microsoft Word or a Word type application. A lot of times the PDF versions don't get through the scanners properly, and some of those key buzzwords don't get picked up. As far as being able to get through to the actual candidate, one of the things I would suggest doing, right, and this doesn't always work out depending on the size of the company and who you know, is try to find someone within the company that you personally know that can vouch for you, have them submit your resume. Because now you're basically getting that free ticket past HR 9 out of 10 times. So when I had this open rec, I had a lot of my friends that I know that can meet those skills, submit their resumes to myself. So then I can basically say, hey, by the way, I want to interview this person. I want to interview that person. That's one way you can look at doing things. And it's not always possible, right? Some companies have different policies about that.
Yeah.
The other way is, man, that's such a tricky question because HR is not always the best layer, right? You have good HR and you have bad HR, and in theory they're there to help, but sometimes they just don't, excuse me, take that extra time to really go through that resume. They're just looking for those buzzwords and quickly going through things. I would say possibly send a cover letter too with your resume, or within the email response saying, hey, I feel like, dear so-and-so, my name is such and such. I've been in the IT security field for XYZ years. Based on this job rec here, I feel that I meet the following criteria with special, and then focus on something special in there. Like, you're looking for someone with 5 years of web application experience. I've been doing this now for 10 plus years. I have experience in all these technologies. I think that shows that you really read it and you have that value, that you're basically taking that time, that drive that you want to get into that position. And I think that goes a little bit further too than those quick hit submit buttons on LinkedIn. Like, you can quickly apply to a job, hit LinkedIn, apply, and then it submits your LinkedIn. Maybe and maybe not, you ever hear back from the people. That kind of takes out the personal level, where I think doing something of that nature will continue giving that personal level and building that relationship.
Awesome. So you did touch on having connections. And earlier you mentioned that you participate in different events, conferences. Do you think that, say, if you want to work in cybersecurity and have a successful career, it's necessary to be part of conferences, CTFs or bug bounties? What are your thoughts on those things?
I want to say those who are really successful in our field definitely build relationships, good relationships up with their peers, right? Yeah. One of the things a lot of hackers think is it's kind of, you're secluded, like you don't really interact with other people, and that's kind of like back in the day, like the older DEF CONs, no one like really kind of hung out. Like, you all went to the event, but everyone was kind of like their little solo person. Nowadays, there are large events, people gather together, people hang out, they share stuff. As far as like bug bounties, I can't really participate in bug bounties because of my employer. There's a lot of NDAs in place. There's a lot of good information out there on bug bounties that if I wasn't bound by all these NDAs, I would love to get involved in, because there's a lot of good chances where you're learning stuff. You're basically able to share information. Your name gets published, which is big. If you find a new bug in an application and you get a CV under your name, now basically people are like, oh, this application has XYZ bug, and oh, so-and-so wrote that bug. I think that definitely helps you out. As far as capture the flags go and things like that, I like doing as many capture the flags as I can. I've done tons of boxes on Vault Hub. I basically got the guru on Hack the Box. I think before my second attempt at the OSCP, I knocked out almost 300 and something CTFs within a year.
That is impressive.
Yeah, I kind of went on a kick and just tried to knock out everyone I could knock out. So definitely there's good CTFs and there's bad CTFs, right? Ones that I consider bad CTFs are ones that are really CTF-ish, right? Where it's more of a puzzle or more of a like non-real world scenario. Those are the ones that kind of irritate me, and I usually give up on, or I put to the back burner and come back to a later date and time. And then there's really good ones that kind of really mimic the real world environment. TJ Null created a great list out there for OCP candidates that kind of really mimic the real world type boxes. And those are the ones that really drive me, right? Because now I'm not only building my skills up on my own, right? So basically my employer gives me time to do that, or I'm doing it myself. And that's helping my employer too, because I'm keeping my skills sharp. I'm thinking, I'm doing things like that. And then I usually share that information with the community if I'm doing a CTF. Some other options too, like you talked about relationships, right? Building those groups with your peers and things. There's other in-person type CTFs, right? So one of the things we do here is there's the Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition, which is actually throughout the whole U.S. now. I've been doing the Mid-Atlantic Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition now for about 15 years.
Oh,
And
nice.
my role on that is I basically donate my time as a red team member
Mm.
to give these kids the experience. So there's about usually 20 of us in the Mid-Atlantic that does this for the kids. And the kids go through multiple qualifiers to get to the regionals, and then from the regionals they go to nationals. And what this does is give these kids a chance to apply their cybersecurity skills that they're learning in school to see if this is what they really want to be doing in real life. They get to defend a simulated real-world network for that whole weekend against a group of attackers while they're trying to keep business services up. They try to keep email running. They try to get the web servers online, make sure that the business is running smoothly. They meet with a virtual CEO. All this
Mm.
time, the attackers are attacking them. So this allows us as red team members to kind of give back to the community, build up that, and then still use our skills in kind of like a CTF environment where these
Yeah.
kids get to participate. And a lot of these kids get an opportunity from like large companies at jobs once they're done at the regionals or the nationals, and they get money for their schools and stuff like that. So, like, if any of your viewers are still in school, especially in the U.S.,
Yeah.
definitely check out the collegiate cyber defense competitions. If they go out to the National Collegiate Cyber Defense Competition website, they can find their local branches, and they can find ways for their schools to participate. Well worth it. You'll build so much. You'll be able to network so much out there. Here on the Mid Atlantic, I've got to meet people like Mubix, TJ Null from OffSec, John Hammond, a bunch of other guys, Larry Pesh,
Yeah.
Paul Acidonian, and all those guys. They've all been involved in this event over the years. So you get to spend that whole weekend hanging out with them. You build that friendship with them, and then you hang out with them at other conferences and things like that. So you build that network up there of peers that are in the industry. So when you
Mm.
show up at XYZ event, be like, hey, Paul, how you doing, man? And then he pulls you over and he introduces more people, and that builds up your network even more. So then you have all these other people you can reach out to down the road.
Like, I'm learning a lot from you, and there's a huge part of me that believes that if I had access to someone like you a few years ago when I desperately wanted to get direction on what to learn, what to focus on, that would have been wonderful. Right now, I understand you do have your YouTube channel, which is great. I watch all your videos every time you upload, and it's awesome
Thanks.
content. Very technical stuff, and also a lot of really good advice. So, what other places, if I wanted to reach out to you, can I find you?
Yeah, definitely. So I allow people to follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn. You guys
Yeah,
can message me on either platform and I'll respond.
yeah,
You guys can message me on my YouTube channel and I respond. The only place I don't open up to the general public is my Facebook. I keep that really just close knit to my family. But
yeah.
either of those, if you search for @GenXWeb on Twitter, that's me. On LinkedIn, it's Michael LaSalvia. I think that might be one of the Michael LaSalvia. That's my dad. But if you don't see this face or the guy scuba diving, then you know it's not me.
Yeah.
Or if you see something about like fixing deli machines, that's my dad and not me. So it's
Yeah.
easy to distinguish the two of us. And then on YouTube, it's Gen X Web. So it's youtube.com/user/Gen X Web. You can find me there. I also have a
Awesome.
website, digitaloffensive.com,
Mm-hmm.
where you can reach out to me there as well. And then, of course, my email would be genxweb@gmail.com. If I don't respond there, I apologize. I get so many emails a day where I'm like, crap, I forgot to respond to this guy. But most of my social media platforms, they usually pop up and keep flashing until I respond, and then I get back to people.
In closing here, what would be the one thing that you would tell someone who aspires to be in cybersecurity? One of the few things that you think they need to understand before they even embark on this journey?
Try harder.
That
No.
is a good one.
No. I would have to say, you got to be true to yourself. Make sure this is something you want to do, right? As I said early on in our interview, is those that succeed in this field are those that are really interested in the material, right?
Mhm.
A lot of people are taken away by the whole like hacker type lifestyle, the whole Hollywood lifestyle that's portrayed of a hacker.
Yeah.
It's not all glam, right? There's a lot of long hours. A lot of the roles in our field, if you want to pen test, you're traveling a lot. Um,
Mhm.
there's definitely ups and downs, and you really got to want this as a career to really make it work long term, I think. So I think all those people out there really just got to ask themselves, is this for them? And if it is, are they willing to invest that time in themselves and into that career to make it a success?
Awesome. Thank you very much, Michael. And I really appreciate you taking this time. We have links to contact Mike in the description. And if you have any questions, like he said, you can always reach out directly on all these platforms and you get some real answers. And if there's any new questions that come, hopefully in the future, Mike, we can invite you to come on a live stream where our
that'd be awesome.
viewers can join and you can also answer them directly.
Yeah, I love doing the live streams with people. So yeah, definitely. Thank you.